Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews. Now, it's not necessarily a big week for number ones, but boy, there sure is a lot of comics that came out this week. There's always good stuff to check out. Maybe not so good this week. There's a couple difficult ones, but we'll get to those. So let's just get started. First up, we have Radio Apocalypse number 1, written by Ram V with artwork by Anand Radhakishan. Now, this is kind of an interesting story, not because it's a post-apocalyptic story, which seems to be that's the flavor of the, well, I wouldn't even say the month anymore. It's the flavor of the week, because every week seems to have like a post-apocalyptic storyline to it. But what is interesting about this one is the way that Ram V sets up the story. So what it is, post-apocalyptic, there's pockets of people and they're trying to get there. And that's the basic premise. But I think what makes this story kind of interesting in at least the first issue is that the whole point of the title, Radio Apocalypse, is that this one town has a radio station and they play music, and it's also an information channel. So it starts off with these two women that are out in the desert. They're trying to make it to the town. They're hearing the radio and they know that they're close. And so one of them has a messed up leg. So the other one goes on. She goes to the town to try to get them to come back, but it's becoming dark, and you know, the bad monsters come out at night. It's a basic premise, and just trying to even explain this basic premise is like you've heard it a million times before. But what I think Ram V does well here is he just sets it up well. It's not that he, at least in this first issue, it's not any different than kind of what I would expect, but there's just something about it, and I think part of that has to do with Radhakishan's artwork that really brings an interesting and unique style to this story, and I think that's a really big help with it. And like I said, it's not a book. I mean, you've read the story a million times, but there's just something about it that works, and I liked it. And also, I think it does a good job of setting up the story for the second issue. So once again, not necessarily blown away, but there was something about it that was really, I liked about it, and I think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Wonder Woman Evolution number 1, written by Stephanie Phillips with pencils by Mike Hawthorne and inks by Adriano de Benedetto. So, look, I love Wonder Woman. I love the regular book. This one, sadly, is just not very good. I think the problem, I think there's a couple problems. First of all, the story is just kind of bland and basic. It's not that it was horrible to read or anything like that. There wasn't anything super catchy about it. It just felt like a regular story, in the sense of, whenever you do, for me, if you do a special or a mini series, give me a reason, give me something that makes this different from just reading a regular issue of Wonder Woman. There's that, but the other thing is, I really hate to say it, I really was not enamored with the artwork. It really just didn't feel right to me. I will say it's competent, but I think there's just times where it didn't look that good, and then it just had a really odd look and feel to it. It just didn't hit me. And like I said, the story was just kind of, bland and basic. It didn't really bring anything new to like the Wonder Woman mythology. It starts off, she fights a villain, saves people. It's all nice and everything, but in the end, it's like, I read this like before, and there wasn't a particularly compelling reason to continue after this first issue. It wasn't very good. Sad to say. Next up, we have Getting Dizzy number 1, written by Shea Fontana with artwork by Celia Moscow. Now, this is not a book that's aimed per se towards me. It's really definitely an all ages book. And I would say definitely, somewhat female skewing, but I don't think that in that respect, that wasn't a problem for me. I think it was just one of those where I did enjoy, it was a nice read and everything, but it's not, I think what does work is that the character of Dizzy, you actually do really fall in love with her. I think what Fontana does here that works really well is that you can totally relate to her. She doesn't have her crap together. She doesn't know what she wants to do with her life and all this kind of stuff. And then she finds out that she has these kind of superpowers, and she puts on a helmet and she's able to see like demons that are possessing people and making them do bad things. That's the basic setup. So what it is it's giving her, this is what she's going to be doing. So once again, it's a pretty basic story. It's pretty simple. And it's a really good all ages book. I'll say that, and especially if you have young girls, this is definitely very positive and that. And I don't think it's like woke or anything like that. I think it's just a really nice, enjoyable story. Mosco's artwork is actually really nice. It fits the story really well. It's a really adorable little book, but it's just not something I'm going to pick up on a regular basis. But that is not saying that it's bad. It's actually quite good, but it's definitely intended for a very certain audience. Next up, we have Fantastic Four Anniversary Tribute #1. I'm not going to read the list of creators, because what this is Fantastic Four issue #1 and also Fantastic Four Annual #3. And what it is, the artwork is redone page by page, the exact story and the rough layouts of Jack Kirby, and it was written by Stan Lee. And so what it is an artist recreates that page in their style. So it's kind of a weird reprint. I'm always, they've done this with, there was the Giant Size X-Men. There was another one I can't think of off the top of my head, but the Marvel's been doing this, and I just find it's interesting in the sense of, I get the tribute and everything and all that kind of stuff. And on that level, I like it. I just don't know that having artists recreate a story is really does much for me. Now, that's not saying it's bad and everything. And actually, there's some really, really nice artwork. There's like Neil Adams. There's Mike Allred. There's Daniel Warren Johnson. There's a ton, Terry Dodson. There's a ton of people, and it's a really, really nice looking book. But for me, it's just, I find these odd. I find them just very odd. I'm not saying it's bad, it's odd. But I will say, if it does encourage new readers to go back and look, if they enjoy the story and everything, then hopefully they'll go back and discover the original stories and the artwork that these are based upon. So in that respect, if that does that job, then it's worth it. But for me, I just find it really odd, especially if you're very familiar with the original book like I've read. So it's not bad, it's not good, it's just, I think it's going to be a personal taste test on this one. Next up, we have Carriers #1, written by Erica Heflin, with artwork by Jim O'Reilly, pencils, and Silas Dixon inks. And then Elias Martin is the artist in the back half of the book. So what this is, it's really simple. The basic premise is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they're pigeons. That's really it. And it really is kind of like, it's not bad, but it was just kind of incredibly okay. It was really one of the problems is the story is just really basic, and it just kind of ends. I don't know if there's a second issue, but it just kind of stops. Like they they figure out that the rats are building something, and they're down in the sewers, and then it just kind of ends. So I'm a little bit mystified on that part. The artwork's okay. The two art teams, they were decent. It wasn't great art. It wasn't terrible art. It was okay for what it was. I mean, the pigeons were, fairly well drawn and everything, but it just like it's okay. It's not terrible, but it wasn't really that great either. Next up, we have Robin's #1, written by Tom Seeley and Boldemar Rivas. So DC had this thing, I think they ran it on Twitter and possibly Instagram, where they had a round. There were creators that proposed stories with characters. And then there was different rounds, and each round somebody would get knocked out, and then they would go up against another concept. And apparently this is the one that won. So I hate to say it, I can't imagine that any of the others would have been like not as good as this, because it's not that this book is bad, but it's literally just the Robins, and it's really kind of boring. It's at a certain point they all just sit around a table and talk about how I was this Robin, and this is, and of course Damien's like, well, I'm the son, so I'm better, and he's just, he's his typical dick self. And it just like it's kind of boring. It doesn't really do anything. I mean, the story doesn't go anywhere. I mean, Tim Seeley's a decent writer, but this is just, it really just falls flat. And honestly, Riva's artwork is just it's not that great. It's very flat. There's a huge lack of backgrounds. There's just no backgrounds through half the book. And then it's just, the artwork is just kind of, it's just average, and yeah, this one definitely skip. I mean, I like Robins. I like all the Robins. Even Damon, who, like, he's always a love-hate relationship. Like, you hate him because he's a dick, but you kind of like him at the same time. But this is just not that good. So definitely skip that this week. Next up, we have Refrigerator Full of Heads #2, written by Rio Yours, with artwork by Tom Fowler. So in the first issue, we knew that it takes place in the same storyline as Basket Full of Heads, and this issue definitely really solidifies that this is really a sequel to that book. And while I think it would help that if you've read it, I think you're still pretty okay if you haven't. You just have to know the premise, which is what the first issue did set up, where in this case, this story, there's an axe. The axe that when you cut people's heads off, the heads are still alive. So in the first issue, so hopefully you've read it, because there's a bit of a spoiler here. They cut off a shark head, and of course the shark head's still alive. So also in the first issue, they pissed off a biker gang. So now in the second issue, the biker gang comes after them. They get their heads lopped off, of course. They're still alive. But one of them gets away. He like rolls his head away on the beach. It's really just like totally messed up, but like awesome at the same time. And it really is setting up like, this is definitely very much a sequel to the first story. So it's a new cast, but we also have a character, and I don't want to give too much away from that original series. So if you haven't read that, you'll be a little lost on that, but I don't think it's fatal in the story. But makes an appearance, and it's definitely going to tie together in the coming issues. Once again, the story by Yours is really good. It really picks up because Joe Hill, this is a Hill House comic. He wrote the original miniseries, and Yours really just picks up that gauntlet and just keeps running with it, and it's really good. And I really Tom Fowler's artwork is really good here. I think he's really perfect. He captures the horror part of it just has a really nice style, very much in that DC horror vein. It's a really fun book, and I'm really digging it. The second issue really rocked. I really like the second issue. I love the first issue, and the second issue just really built on that first issue really well. So definitely be checking that out. It's really good. Next up, we have Batman versus Bigby, A Wolf in Gotham, #3, written by Bill Willingham, with art pencils by Brian Level and inking by Jay Leaston. So this issue, we're getting to the point, because we're at the halfway point, because it's 6 issues, where we're starting to figure out what is kind of going on here. We know that it appears that Bookworm is the villain, which is really kind of interesting. He's one of those like oddball like Batman villains that you rarely see, mostly because he's not bad, but he's kind of not one of the big DC Batman villains. But Willingham, he's really setting things up. I think the first 2 issues they were definitely exposition setup. So it was very much this is kind of a slow burn story, where this issue kind of kicks in the action. This is pretty much the big action issue, where it's starting to figure out, of course they figure out who the villain is. But also we kind of really get to see Bigby for the first time as a wolf. So that's interesting. And now we're getting to the point where him and Batman really have met. So, but the question kind of comes down to, we see it is, and this is, I think, really interesting with Willingham. We see the wolf, and is it Bigby? I think so. But then it might not be. So that's kind of the interesting thing, where is it Bigby, or is there another wolf? And I think that's kind of an interesting possibility of a twist. Now, I don't know that there is going to be two wolves, but I think it is Bigby. But who knows? Bill Willingham is really good about pulling a wild card out of his hat, especially in the Fables universe. So I'm actually, like I said, the first issue I was a little skeptic. The second issue was better. The third issue really solidifies it. So I'm definitely really on board with this. I'm a huge Fables fan, and I think this is a good way to get people into that Fables universe by teaming it up with Batman. So I think it's worth checking out, and I do like Level's artwork, and Leaston do a really nice job. They have kind of a gritty style. It was a little rough for me in the first issue, but I've really warmed up to their artwork, and I think if it's really fitting the story really well. So really, I think it's worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of Fables. It's been a long time. Fables is coming back next year, so this is a precursor to that. So next up, we have Primordial #3, written by Jeff Lemire, with artwork by Andrea Sorrentino. Now, once again, I'm a huge Jeff Lemire fan, and this is the same team who did the brilliant Gideon Falls. So what the best way to describe this is, so the basic premise is, in the 60s, the space programs that Russia and America, there was the space race. Well, in this timeline, that does not happen. But the dog Laika and the monkeys that they send into space it's kind of like the space program in the 60s meets 2001, where they go up and they're like in this weird universe. But down here, we also have a scientist that knows something is going on. So in the last issue, he went to Russia. So now we see that, because the lady who raised Laika to go to the space program kind of knows what's going on, but we still don't quite know what's going on with why this is all happening, and then there's the whole like weird 2001 with the monkey and the dog, 2 monkeys and the dog, and they're talking to each other, and we still don't know what's going on. But even though this thing is weird and we don't really quite know what's going on, that is what makes it really interesting. And I love the way that Lemire is really laying out this story, is the fact that you're totally not sure of what the hell's going on. But it at the same time you're not lost. The story is definitely moving forward. And that is why I love this book so much, is that he hasn't answered all the questions, but he's also slowly getting to those answers while still having questions. And he really, it's so well laid out and everything story wise. Then on top of that, you have Sorrentino's artwork, which is this. He's a brilliant artist. He just continues to like blow me away with this artwork. But this book really has it continues to just blow my mind, because when we're in the real world, the basically Earth, he has his style, but then when you're in like the Animal 2001 section, it's a completely different style, and he blends them and mixes them and twists them, and it really adds so much, and it really makes the story just visually amazing. It's a wonderful book, and I know, at least at my comic shop, it's really been a tough sell. It's a really good book, and you really need to be checking out. Like I said, this is a third issue. This is really good stuff. I cannot, each issue just keeps building and getting better, and I can't wait to see where this story ends up, because this is just, it's really amazing. Next up, we have Suicide Squad King Shark #3, written by Tim Seeley, with artwork by Scott Collins. So basically we have Thunderdome with these characters. We have King Shark. He's been eating his way to the top. And then in this issue we have, so Amanda Waller apparently sends the Ghost Suicide Squad, or that's got the Demon and Gentleman Jim Ghost, to the island, and just mayhem ensues. This book is just so freaking wild. Honestly, I don't know how Seeley is keeping it all in check, because there's so much batshit crazy going on in this story, but that's what's making it really interesting, because I think King Shark's an interesting character, but at a certain point, he's a shark, and really, what can you do with him? But I have to give it to Seeley that he's found a way to fit him into the story, and there's more to the story than just King Shark in this Thunderdome sort of championship. And that's what's making it really interesting, because it really does center on King Shark, but there's so many other things going on with all the other characters and Amanda Waller, and it just, like I said, it's all like, in a weird way, it's a total jumble, but Seeley is keeping it all on track, and it's just this wild ride that you're just, literally this issue, you just hang on and go with the whole thing, because that's what's going on. And then you have Collins, who is able to capture all this insanity and actually draw it and keep the flow of it. It's just, it's like a 1-2 punch. I mean, in the sense of that Seeley brings the story, and then Collins comes in and brings the artwork, and then you're just like, by the end of the issue, you're kind of exhausted, because especially this issue, there was so much craziness going on, and yet, as crazy as it got, it never lost its focus, which is really good. I'm really enjoying this. This is one of those books that I think will surprise a lot of people, and it's not what you would expect, like from a King Shark book, and I think that's what's making it really interesting. Next up, we have Not All Robots #4, written by Mark Russell with Mike Deodato Jr. So now we have the basically the fembots, the really human looking robots. They've taken over. So the regular robots they're all fired from their job, because nobody wants them anymore, because they've created all the other robots. And so now we have, I mean, there's the whole humans versus humans are, revolting against the robots. Now the robots are revolting against robots, and then it kind of comes to a head, this issue, because there's the protest of the humans against the robots, and then the robots are protesting robots, and they clash, and it gets really bloody very quickly. And I think what's really interesting is how Russell is able to build to manage all this kind of social commentary within this really great story, because there's so much depth beyond what's on the surface, which he is always so good at. And there is so much underneath this story that just really is amazing. And Diodato Jr., like I said, I continue to just really be impressed, excuse me, by his artwork on this book, because this is kind of, I always say this is a bit out of his wheelhouse, but that's not saying that he couldn't do this. I think it's actually really good book for him to do, because it shows how strong of an artist he really is, and how, because for the most part, it's about the emotions of the characters, and a lot of it's in facial expressions. Even in the robots, he's able to capture emotions in the robots' faces, and they have like no face. So it's this is really good. This is the next last issue, and we've really built to a head. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all susses out and where the chips fall. So I'm really excited. This has really been an excellent book. And you really need to be picking up. It's really a must buy. Next up, we have Groo meets Tarzan #4, written by Sergio Aragones and Mark Evanier, with artwork by Sergio Aragones and Thomas Yates. So we get to the conclusion of where Groo goes to Tarzan, the real universe. And amazingly, he actually helps save the day, which is pretty shocking for Groo, but I think we kind of saw this coming. Then we also have the quote-unquote real-life story of Sergio being trapped at this third-rate wild animal park in near San Diego. And of course, it also has to do with Comic-Con. So there's just, once again, as with every Groo book, there's insanity. But then there's the weird thing of Tarzan bringing kind of a sense of reality, but then this issue really blends those two together, especially in the art department. The story has just been wonderful. This has been a really charming book to read. If you've missed it, there is a trade coming out early next year, and it's really just, this is really a fun book. And who isn't a fan of Sergio Aragones? But I think what I really love about this is it really will introduce people to Tom Yates' artwork, and he is just really a brilliant artist. And they blend together, in even though their styles are completely in different universes, they make it work, and it really is it's been a really fun ride. It's been a great story. And it's always nice to see Tarzan, and Groo's back too, so that's always a plus. So, like I said, if you missed it, this has really been a blast to read and to just visually take it all in. They've done the team has really just done a fabulous job here. Next up, we have Superman, Son of Kal-El, #5, written by Tom Taylor and with artwork by John Timms. Now, this is the big. Well, I mean, it was in the news a while back that John Kent is bisexual and that he has a boyfriend, Jay. So this issue really solidifies them having a relationship. But what's interesting is really, once again, this type of news thing, this book has been really good. Beyond that, Superman's bisexual and all that crazy stuff that went on when this was announced. The thing is that John Kent is actually a very interesting character because he's obviously half Kryptonian, half human. But I think what Taylor has done here, he's done what you should do. Tell the story about John Kent not as Superman. Now he is Superman at the moment because Kal-El has taken off and John is becoming Superman of Earth. And so this issue, what happens is he kind of gets a power overload. It's almost like he got a burst of sunlight, and he basically kind of goes nuts because he can hear everything, like all the trouble that's going on and people needing help and stuff. And he ends up ultimately kind of burning out. He gets sick from it because he's running himself ragged. And so that's where that's how he ends up at Jay's place, and then they kiss, And really, I think the thing is, don't people are going to buy this because of that kiss. They're already going to a second printing. The thing is that you should be reading this book because Tom Taylor and John Timms are doing a wonderful job on this book, and they're really developing an interesting character in John Kent. And I think that's what hopefully people will continue to read from this point on, because the kiss is just it's really irrelevant. It really his sexuality is completely irrelevant. The fact that they're just doing really a good story is why you should be picking this book up. And then I love Tim's artwork. He just continues to really just knock it out of the park with this book. It's a great looking book. The stories have been great. Tom, like I said, Taylor and Timms have just you. And if you've missed it, they're reprinting the first 4 issues. Just you should get this book because it's good, not because of this big kiss moment. So just get the book for that reason, because it's good. Next up, we have The Nice House on the Lake, number 6, written by James Tynion IV, with artwork by Alvarado Martinez Bueno. Now, this book just continues to blow my mind. So now we find out what kind of is going on in this. So they found the other house, and there's another person there, and he actually knows kind of what's been going on with Walter, in the fact that he lived with him, like in, say, college or whatever, with another guy, and they concocted this whole somewhat backstory of the apocalypse and everything. And so what it is he was the guy that they found in the second house. He's the one that has designed this house and this island and the whole thing. And yes, we kind of find out that Walter's an alien. Not that we haven't figured that out, but a lot of the story really opens up here, because we really start to find out what this is, somewhat a social experiment, but also they do plan on obliterating every human except for, but they have kept this group because he has picked them for specific reasons to be like the experiment, or to see what humans are like in a controlled environment. And that's really what we learn in this issue. Tynion just continues to just really, this story is really amazingly, it's really deep. There's a great twist at the end that I will not give away, and it really is really interesting. And then Martinez Bueno's artwork just continues to just be absolutely beautiful. And the fact that a lot of this, especially this issue and a lot of the other issues, it's people standing around talking and stuff, and how he just brings it to life, and just the emotions with the facial expressions. It's stunning. It's a gorgeous looking book. The story's great. You really just need to be buying this book. Next up, we have Nightwing 86, written by Tom Taylor, with artwork by Robbie Rodriguez. Now, this is the last of the Fear State crossover. So Bruno Redondo is coming back next issue. There's going to be a big issue next one. We'll be talking about that next month for sure. I can tell you that. But I will say, even though I haven't been reading the Fear State, I wasn't insulted by this crossover. It was fine. It's okay. I'm not going to read the Fear State. It did involve like that part of the storyline, but Taylor made it accessible to people that have been reading Nightwing. So I didn't feel that I didn't feel like it took it too far out of what we've been reading with the regular Nightwing storyline. Now, with that being said, it's fine for what it is. It's not really spectacular, but it's just part of Fear State. It's an okay read. Robbie Rodriguez's artwork's nice, does the job. I'll just be happy to kind of get back to the regular storyline, because that's what I've really been getting this book for. But otherwise, it wasn't great, but I didn't feel that, like, God, this is a waste of like 3 issues that I really just will never care about. Next up, we have Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, number 5, written by Tom King and Bilquis Evilly. So this issue, they actually get really close to catching the guy who murdered Ruthie's dad, but he actually has a Mordu globe that transports them to this planet where there is a green sun. It's a it's a green kryptonite sun. So what it is Ruth has to try to keep Supergirl alive so she doesn't die under the Krypton sun, while also being on a planet where there's like monsters and dinosaurs and stuff. And it's really interesting because this story really gives a great momentum to Ruthie as a character, in the fact that, you know, Supergirl is out of commission and she's got to help protect her for like 9 hours till the sun goes down. And it's really just a really interesting story. And once again, King is really, when he's doing these stories, it's really, there's such great depth to these characters in the story that it's just, there's so much more than it just being like a superhero book. And that's what I love how he brings to these stories that he does. And once again, this is just a really great character study story issue that just is just a great to read. And then you have Evelyn's artwork that just continues. She's a brilliant artist, and she really is just really bringing her A game to this book. This is a really great looking book. The story is amazing, and you really need to be buying this. This is just spectacular stuff, and it just each issue just gets better and better, and I can't wait. We got 3 more issues. It's been amazing so far, and it just keeps getting better. Next up, we have Space Bastards number 8 and Space Bastards number 9. Written by Eric Peterson and Joe Aubrey, with artwork by Derek Robertson. Now, I will say last month, I inadvertently, because I missed ordering it, it's my fault, that I missed reviewing the 8th issue. So we're going to combine the 8th and 9th issue, because the 9th issue came out this week. So this book has just been one hell of a ride. And so the 8th and 9th issue is really wraps up the first story arc. So what it is so they're trying to put the delivery system out of business by this basically transporting system that the bad guy's running. And so the Intergalactic Postal Service is basically trying to shut this down, and so they can keep their business and also, like, you know, defeat the bad guy. That's the basic story here. So all the characters, all the quote unquote good guys, I use that term loosely here, basically formulate a plan to take them out. And there's a lot of bumps on the way, and they are able to take him out. But I think what's been interesting about this is, beyond that, the story that Peterson and Aubrey, it's been a hell of a ride. But these last 2 issues really just are really good story, in the sense of, I think that it wraps up the first storyline quite well, but there's still definitely more to come. And that's a good mark. Like, you want to have it where you do wrap up most of your story, and you finish off your character story arcs. But if you have more story to tell, then you set it up, but you want to feel satisfied with the relatively finish of the first story arc. And they do that quite well here. And once again, Derek Robertson just knocks it out of the park. This is just visually a feast for the eyes. There's dinosaurs, there's sex bots, there's blood, there's staplers. You just have to read it to figure it out. This has really been a wild and crazy book, and it really. I also like the fact that it never stays I mean, it always stays that it's crazy and wild. That always stays. But I love how they really have developed the characters. I mean, it's much more, has much more depth now than when it started, which I have to say really surprised me. And I really, Aubrey and Peterson have done a really good job of really developing these characters within this crazy storyline. And then you, once again, you have Robertson just really bringing the artwork. This is really, it's been a really great ride, and I'm really interested to see. Like I said, it has a good setup for more story, and there is a second season coming next year. So if you haven't been reading the book, there are the first trade's out, the second trade's going to come out early next year, so you can catch up with the first 9 issues. And I think if you're looking for something different, especially that, and there was a couple of side story issues. One of them was drawn by Simon Bisley that was really, really a good story. It's a book you should be really checking out. So, like I said, if you haven't been picking up, the first trade's out, the second trade's coming, and I think it's worth checking out. I mean, it's been a really good story with really solid artwork, and that's going to do it this week. Quite a few books this week. We're a little longer than I expected. As always, public service announcement. I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach. Ryan runs an amazing store down there. Annie and Eduardo are really, really great, and they have a great pull service. They offer 30% off of trades and graphic novels every day. They also offer, if you do the pull service, you offer discounts on your new comics. It's really a great store, and they definitely take care of their customers, and they have great customers too. Also, check out their Facebook group page. It's a lot of fun. A lot of people post fun stuff over there. They also do a weekly unboxing video, which I sometimes have been a part of. And they also have a sister store in Culver City, Pulp Fiction Culver City. Same name, separate store run by Chris and her team. Once again, they offer great service, pull service, and discounts on their trades and graphic novels. As always, please get vaccinated right now. Things are looking good, but it's becoming like wintertime and people are going to be indoors, so people might be close together. Make sure if you get a chance, get your booster shot if you're available. Continue to social distance, wear your mask, just be safe out there. And as always, we end our show. Please be kind. Kindness doesn't cost anything. Kindness is great for you, and it can really make somebody's day. So being kind is definitely important right now. Times are still tough out there for a lot of people, so please be kind. That's going to do it this week. So take care of yourselves. We'll do it again next week. Thanks a lot for tuning in. This is Steven from Pop Culture Maven signing out. Have a great one, folks. Bye-bye.